What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, going through the latest Detroit Lions news. I thought this was definitely a necessary video that we do as we get into this week, because I'm sure we're going to look back, take a look at more of the past first preseason game. We're also, of course, going to look at our upcoming preseason game against the Colts this weekend, but we have joint practices this week, so this is like a nice, kind of reset to the week as we take a look at some of DC's comments post-game after the Lions' first preseason game, as well as some of the roster updates. The Lions have to get down to 85 players by Tuesday, so roster cuts are beginning. Really, these aren't the big, massive roster cut times. Okay, it's 85, then it's 80, and then it's 80 to 53. That's when you have the big roster cuts that are going to be taking place. So we're going to keep up with all of that throughout this, up until the season. But with that being said, let's get it started.
Fired up. It's made a great decision.
Great teammates, coaches, and other people who want to be Super Bowl champions. And we are. We're going to do it this year.
And we're going places because we want to go places.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. We are back with another Lions latest video. A couple of different things to definitely jump into today. The Lions did have practice that was open to the media today, so we have some notes from that, even though it sounds like it was a little bit of a lighter day of practice, as the last 2 days have kind of been that. Dan Campbell told us they had a day to kind of clean up some things, then they had a recovery day, and today they were in shells, so it sounds like it was a little bit lighter still. But tomorrow, he said they would kind of get prepared for the Indianapolis Colts. And then Wednesday is like the first of the joint practices, it sounds like, against Indy. And he called it like having 2 games in a week because they get to go against Indianapolis. He said the starters will get about 30 reps. And then, of course, we also play Saturday against the Colts. So you're playing them twice, which is, kind of cool. Last year, Lions didn't have any joint practices. So I'm sure we'll get some notes from that as well. And I know a couple of you guys are actually going to that. So have a great time. With that being said, there are some things that we need to dive into with this, starting off with the injury report, and then we'll come back and dive into some other things. Getting into some of the injury updates, these are specifically from today's practice and also what Dan Campbell told us. Then we'll pull it back and we'll go into some of the notes that Dan Campbell gave us, some of the notes from practice, and also the roster cuts. But I do want to start off with the injury updates that we have been given most recently. So, of course, the PUP list remains the same, as well as the NFI list. All those names have been the same for a while now. Quintez Cephus returning to practice. That's awesome news. Quintez Cephus back at it for the Lions. I don't know in what fashion, and it doesn't mean that he's going to be playing Friday. Now, I guess you could say he's technically on the bubble. To me, he's making the team. I can't see a scenario where this guy is getting cut. But, hey, Tom Kennedy continues to do his thing. Trinity Benson is going to want to have another good showing. I would say after having that drop, he really wants to probably clean those up, but continue to show that he can be a deep threat, as he did that once. So Quintez Cephus definitely want to come in and battle with guys like Devin Funchess, who are flashing a little bit. But I'm just glad to have Quintez Cephus back. That's awesome news to have, because we weren't really sure where that was going to go. Now, one update that we don't really know about from different sources that I've looked at, some say they didn't see Big V at all. Some say he left practice early, but they're not sure why. But Halapulavati Vaitai, look how much better we are at saying that. Okay, it only took a couple years, and now we can say it sort of normally. Big V left practice maybe early today, or maybe he didn't practice. I would assume he probably left practice early. Not sure why. I'm sure Dan Campbell will give us an update on that going forward. That's not something that you want to hear. That is our starting right guard. And in his place immediately was Tommy Kramer to fill in. Now, Tommy Kramer also reportedly got some reps as the third string center, and that is because the Lions cut a player that was our third string center. So we'll get to that in a second. But Big V, definitely something to keep an eye on. Tommy Kramer was probably the best offensive lineman, hands down, in that second unit in Friday's game, as I continue to rewatch that game, just in terms of consistency. And last year, made multiple starts for us last season. He played both the left guard and right guard position, so that's understandably so. The Lions feel confident with him in there, but you definitely don't want to lose Big V, man. He was really good last year. He took a huge step forward, and with how dominant that offensive line looked on Friday, hopefully it's nothing serious going on there with Halapulavati Vaitai. But we do have a pretty solid backup and capable backup, in my opinion, in Tommy Kramer, who has kind of stood out amongst the rest there with the depth units. With that being said, Josh Johnson continues to be sidelined, the receiver. Also, Ife Melifonwu continues to be sidelined. Savion Smith, Brady Breeze as well are kind of like two additions to this. Savion Smith, it's an interesting one. I don't remember him getting hurt in Friday's game. But with that being said, Savion Smith, I did notice, because I thought he played a good game at cornerback with the depth units, he also worked as our personal protector at times in punt formations. So he's getting involved there as well. We've seen him work on, in the gunner position in practice. Savion Smith, man, he is a dark horse right now to make this team. Don't count him out. And then you also have Brady Breeze. Did play, but he suffered an injury actually on the opening kickoff. So that's unfortunate, something that, he dealt with there. I'm hoping that he get back pretty quickly because I'm a fan of Brady Breeze. I think he's taken some big strides, at least from what I've seen in training camp up to this point. I think he's taken some massive strides in practice. But it does sound like CJ Moore is back out there competing in practice, even though we didn't see him on Friday. But it sounds like he's kind of ramping up and maybe with the second unit right now. So we'll keep an eye on that. Julian Okwara continues to be sidelined. So the two new additions are Brady Breeze and Savion, even though we don't really know what's going on there with Savion. A couple little updates they gave us with Levi and Jason Gabindo, even though they're not like the best updates because there's not really like a timeline here. He said they don't really know what the timeline is on these players. He said, unfortunately, Jason's been a little bit longer than they were expecting dealing with his ankle injury. He is on the PUP list, and he said he doesn't expect him to be back and ready to play against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is their final preseason game. So something to watch for there. There is that like 2-week break between the final preseason game and between the regular season. So then the question is he remain on the PUP list? Does he have to miss the first few weeks of the season, or are they able to get him back and ready to go for the first game of the season if he's not ready to go? Definitely doesn't sound the most optimistic for him being ready to go for the beginning of the regular season, but we'll keep an eye on it. And with Levi, he kind of just threw him into the same category of not really having a timeline on Levi, and he said there's a handful of guys that I guess won't be traveling, might practice, maybe even the preseason game, that they're just right now working on rehabbing and getting back. So those are some of the updates that they gave us in terms of some of the injuries that we have been dealing with. Will Harris, I guess, had to tape up his hand today in practice. He had an injury that he dealt with in the preseason game, but he did return, but he ended up taping up his hand in practice. Also, Jayshon Cornell and Anthony Pittman, according to Pride of Detroit, they say that he had to get some work with trainers, but they ultimately both returned. So I thought Anthony Pittman was really good in Friday's game, so definitely want to see more of that guy. I want to see what he can really bring to the table. And Jayshon Cornell made some flashes, made some plays. There were some left to be desired there. So same thing for Jayshon Cornell. Definitely a lot you want to see, especially considering the reps that he's getting. And if we don't have Levi by week 1, Cornell could be in line for a pretty nice role for the Lions. So those are two guys that you want to see back for sure. Those are the injury updates that they gave us. But the best news of all of it is that Quintez Cephus is back. First thing, as we just hit on it, Kirby Joseph, he said, is one guy that did stand out to him in that preseason game. Now, we've talked about Kirby Joseph. I don't remember if I had him in the up. I think I had him in my up-down category when I went to my like studs, duds, and up-downs. I think I put him in the up-down category because I thought, hey, Kirby Joseph, he got beat a few times, specifically in man coverage. He gave up that touchdown. He almost had the pass break up. His long arms almost got in there, just about a step behind on that play. And there was a deep crosser that they ran where he was a step behind. The pass was just dropped. But with that being said, I thought fundamentally he did show some things. I mean, first off, the tackling in space. They had a complete communication breakdown in the back end. Wide open receiver. Shouldn't have happened. But he did make a good tackle in space, made a good tackle filling a run lane, and I thought Kirby Joseph did show some promise in his man truck coverage, athletic ability, and upside there. He said Kirby's one of those guys that they've gotten into, in practice a few times, but he is one that did stand out to him, and he showed some things. And also, he brought up Malcolm Rodriguez and said Malcolm didn't disappoint. I think probably the reason he's saying that is because Malcolm was with the ones. Alex didn't play. We know Alex is, the top linebacker. He continues to be the top linebacker, and guys are really just playing with him. But Alex didn't play Friday. However, he said Malcolm Rodriguez didn't disappoint. Hey, you want to clean him up there, but Malcolm Rodriguez did show, I think, just in the game of the whole, the athleticism that he has, how he doesn't seem behind. Like, he's ready to go, man. The guy could play right now. It's just he's slowly working his way up to becoming a starting linebacker to the Lions, and it may happen way earlier than a lot of people think this season. Speaking of guys that didn't play, Dan Campbell said that Jared Goff, they were not going to play Jared Goff in this game. So it sounds like they were planning to just play every starter but Jared Goff, basically every single starter on the offense side, but not Goff in this game. By the way, Patrick Mahomes played for the Chiefs. I thought that was very interesting. Some teams do it, some teams don't. He said their plan was not to play Jared Goff, but Goff came to him and said, hey, if those guys are going to play, then I'm going to play. And he's like, all right, you're going to play.
I was proud of him. We really didn't intend on playing him. And, he was the one he came to my office and said, I want to play. And I said, well, you're not playing. And he said, well, if they're playing, I'm playing. And I said, okay, you're playing. So I appreciate that about him, though. And, he went out there and ran that offense, and that's really what you're looking for out of your ones. You want to see them play fast, efficient, move it down the field, and score touchdowns. Certainly to finish out the drive. So I was pleased with them.
It was 3-4. The only incomplete pass was one that bounced off of Jamal Williams' chest. So it was a very good drive, and he said he was proud of him for that. Asked about Chase Lucas, because Chase Lucas did make some nice plays there towards the end, and he said Chase Lucas needs more time in the program. Now, he said the same thing about Devontae Beckett, right, in terms of putting on more strength, getting a little bit stronger. Think about A.J. Parker. He did the same thing this last offseason. He's talked about that, the muscle that he's put on, the weight that he's put on, so we can kind of mix it up a little bit more between the tackles. When I threw out the idea of Jerry playing slot in my cornerback video before the season, it was because of the experience. He's powerful, and Aaron seems to like those type and style of players for that position. But even if he doesn't, I do think it's clear that the Lions like to have their slots with a little bit more bulk, not like big, but just a little more strength so they can handle some of them run responsibilities that they put on their plate, especially in this style. He's like, man, he did good in the disguise coverage that we ran, and that must have been the one where he almost had the pick. I would love to see the all-22 from that, but hey, you know, we don't have it. Speaking of Jeff Okudah, Dan Campbell said they were encouraged with Jeff Okudah.
Some good things. It was encouraging. We came out of this game encouraged with Jeff. It was like, okay, this is pretty good. You know, just to see him get up there and press a little bit, challenge, and then, man, he's getting involved in some of these tackles. And so I would say we were encouraged. That's the best way to say it. It was encouraging.
That's what I said. With Jeff Okudah, man, the only knock that I had was the completion that he gave up to Kiddo Hodge. He was kind of opened up, playing the outside leverage, and gave up that completion. Yes, you wanted to see that be better. That was the only target that he had against him. But I also thought that physically he did look pretty good in some of his physicality that he was playing with close to the line of scrimmage, the way that he was battling off the line, the way he was kind of sealing off some of those underneath routes. And at the same time, of course, his tackling in space has always been a huge part of his game. Chris was out there as like the starter on Friday, and then he came out, so Jeff Okudah basically just took over, and then Will came back in a little later. I do think Okudah is going to ultimately be the week 1 starter across from Monty in week 1 of the regular season. The guy he talked about was Brock Wright, and he said they were actually hoping for a little bit more of a jump in the spring, which would have been like the OTAs time. And I could understand that, at least from the 1 day of OTAs that I saw. I remember I didn't see him like flash or anything through that. I think he was, you know, playing, but I didn't remember seeing him flash, you know, at that time. Now, of course, there were no pads or anything like that. So Shane Zylstra, I thought, was making some big plays through that time. But he said his pass protection is starting to show up, which I actually thought Brock Wright had the best pass protection rep. I think that was actually in our notes of our video that we did on Sunday. Thought he had the best pass protection rep possibly from a tight end. He said that it's not always the most clean with Brock Wright. However, he looks at him as like the ideal wide tight end. All right, that's what he feels with Brock Wright. And it looks like Brock Wright could be in line to have a more expanded role, at least through these next couple of preseason games. He played a lot in that first preseason game that I didn't realize until I kept watching it back. Played a lot in that game. However, he may be looking at a different type of role where you get some different reps at different spots that the Lions can evaluate going forward. He also talked about the whole Godwin thing, because I thought it was interesting that he was not our top kick returner. And his explanation for it was we know what we have in Godwin, and that's a good thing. We just kind of wanted to give opportunity to see what everybody else kind of brought in that room. Meaning that Trinity Benson was the top kick returner to start that game. They also mixed in guys like Maurice Alexander. He said we did the same thing at punt returner too, and not starting Khalif Raymond. I actually don't think Khalil Pimpleton got any punt return reps. I may be wrong on that, but if I don't remember him getting any punt return reps. But that's what he said about the decision to do that with the kick returners and the punt returners. Now, Trinity Benson, his first 2 kick returns were not the greatest. See, there's a lot that goes into having a good kick return. It's not just on what the kick returner did. You know, ball placement, blocking, how it sets up, everything like that goes into it. However, the first 2 were not great kick returns. I actually don't think the first 2 got to the 20. However, the third one did get to the 31-yard line, so that one was pretty solid. But that was his explanation for that. Because remember, Godwin was a very good kick returner for us last season, just like Khalif Raymond was a very good punt returner for us last season. But I was very curious by that, because it definitely seems like right now Godwin is running back 5. See how that adjusts going forward. But then not seeing him start as a kick returner was like, well, this can't be good. However, that's what he said about Godwin. So we'll see how that ultimately plays out. I definitely don't think anybody shined at kick returner, at least in the first preseason game, where it was like, okay, that guy's the guy that needs to be getting rest back there, not Godwin. I don't think anybody's taking Godwin's spot at that position as of right now as a top kick returner. But we'll see. Maybe they'll continue to give those guys opportunities in the next 2 preseason games. I would, if you feel like you know what you have in Godwin. You didn't need to see him in the first game. Touch a little bit on some of the containment issues that they did have, and he said, part of that, and I think this was actually a post-game notes that he made, he said, a lot of that is that we don't have those guys in practice necessarily, where our guys are consistently trying to defend that. For example, when they go to 11 on 11s, they're running their offense. So they're not doing a lot of the quarterback scrambles like the Marcus Mariota play style. They're not doing things like that, but it was also kind of a refresher for our guys that, hey, you got to be prepared for that. But as he said, we really only prepared like half a day for the Atlanta Falcons, and, we got prepared against Philly because Jalen Hurts is going to run. We had to play him last season. He's going to try to get outside the pocket. So just having containment right? Making sure you keep everything inside is something that they're going to have to be prepared for. Didn't really spend much time preparing for the Atlanta Falcons, it sounded like, because really that first drive to me wasn't just a whole bunch of terrible reps. I really don't think it was. We had some bad ones in there now, okay? I understand that we had some bad ones in there, but it wasn't just a whole bunch of terrible plays, especially our interior defensive line was doing some things. But with that being said, we did give up contain multiple times, including on the pass rush rep where we decided to bring a blitz, and immediately Mariota got outside on Charles Harris's side and took off for a first down. I believe that was on like a third and pretty long. So, just things like that popped up, but that was kind of his explanation for it. With that being said, the Detroit Lions have made a couple of roster cuts, and this will continue to update because the Lions have to get down to 85 players by Tuesday. With that being said, which is tomorrow, with that being said, the Lions have announced 3 cuts as of now, and these all took place before practice, for my understanding. So the first one that we have is center Ryan McCollum. Now, last season, he was our third-string center. Big reason we had to do this is because Frank Ragnow went down against the Chicago Bears, so then it was Evan Brown who had to step up, and then behind him, you needed to have a backup for Evan Brown, so that was Ryan McCollum. Now, Evan Brown played pretty well last season. I thought he definitely, he struggled a little bit in his first preseason game, kind of getting back into the action of things, but with that being said, they have now cut Ryan McCollum. I can't say this is like a huge surprise of a cut. Also, keep in mind, Ryan McCollum did miss some time so far through the training camp program in terms of practice, so they haven't got to see him. Evan Brown, with the deal that he was resigned to, not a huge deal, but it's like, okay, he's the backup center, and key teams don't carry 3 centers, unless you're playing like guard, and you're like, oh, he's our backup guard though too, or backup tackle, whatever it may be. That's never going to happen, but that's not really going to happen. But whatever it may be, Ryan McCollum wasn't that. He was our third-string center, so the Lions have waived Ryan McCollum, which means he'll go through the waiver wire. Now, he did seem to have some issues in that preseason game for sure. As I said, I didn't think the second unit offensive line was very good. He had some issues in this game. I would say specifically more on the pass protection side. And even if you go back to last year, if you remember against Green Bay, we took Ryan McCollum out of that game and put Jonah Jackson at center. Not because of an injury, because he wasn't doing very well. They put Jonah at center. Now today, they're, as we heard, cross-training Tommy Kramer a little bit at the center position with the third unit in place of not having Ryan McCollum. That did happen last season, and I definitely think you could see it on the film. He did seem to struggle just one-on-one, just winning your matchup against a defensive lineman, continuously like allowing penetration into the backfield, collapsing the pocket. That was an issue. I think he's a pretty smart center. He seems to have good reaction time. He seems to have good feel for it. He absolutely battles in the run game. He just had some issues of allowing guys to push the backfield, to push the pocket, or even on the run game, get through gaps. He did struggle a little bit in that Friday game, so the Lions have made the wave now. With that being said, wishing Ryan McCollum the best of luck going forward. You never know, he could end up ultimately back on the Lions at some point if something did happen to pop up. Hopefully that's not the case, but good luck Ryan McCollum going forward. Also, they have listed Garrett Griffin, the tight end. This one's a little bit interesting to me because Garrett Griffin did get some very good reps in Friday's game, specifically like working with the starters at time in that game, but they utilized him as basically a fullback. They played him a little bit in line, but they used him as like a fullback in that game in place of having Jason Kabinda. Now, Garrett Griffin was one of the earlier signings. He wasn't an expensive signing. Actually, there is no dead cap for the Lions making this move. There's also no dead cap with the cut that the Lions made of Ryan McCollum. There is no dead cap with the cut of Garrett Griffin. And watching him back, I definitely didn't think he played bad. I mean, really, I watched the game back. You see his reps. I don't think he played bad. They worked him from fullback. You could see his ability specifically as a run blocker. He definitely is a little bit better, I think, as run blocker than most of the tight ends that we have. And at that fullback position, he did a couple of like flat, routes just leaking out towards the sideline. He had one reception. The other one was incomplete. It was a little bit in front of him. Maybe the timing was a little bit off there. But I don't think he performed bad in his role. I think a very big part of this, however, is maybe how he's limited in his role. And the ways they look to utilize him, his role isn't very expansive. And we kind of knew this when we signed him, that, yeah, he's not a big receiving threat. And the Lions, I think, we're just using him here as a placeholder while Jason Kabinda is out. Hey, let's let this guy play at fullback. But even in training camp, I never really noted, hey, Garrett Griffin's making plays in the pass game. I never noted that with Garrett Griffin. So I think it's just kind of a lack of maybe having the receiving depth to his game. Like if he was a big pass catching target, he'd probably make this team, but just not really having that in his game and not being utilized there is probably a huge reason for this. Also at the tight end position, we still have TJ Hawkinson, who didn't play, so that's part of the reason that Garrett Griffin got the reps that he's did, and Jason Kabinda didn't play, who will be our starting fullback. He got paid pretty good money on a 2-year deal. He's going to be our top fullback. Griffin's not taking that role from him, so Hopefully this means good thing to Griffin, to Cabinda, and they're like, hey, we're going to get him back, though. We do believe we can get this guy back week 1, because otherwise you would then be plugging in someone else to this position that we really haven't seen play at that position. But yes, Garrett Griffin didn't really bring that, and I never really noticed that in training camp either. So Garrett Griffin, again, wishing him the best of luck. When the Lions signed this, it was an interesting signing. He was always kind of just a different package type of piece that could bring some things as a blocker, and I like that for him. But with that being said, I think the part of the issue is that he wasn't a big receiving threat, and he still have T.J. Hockenson, Brock Wright, you still have Shane Zylstra, James Mitchell, who I don't think we saw on Friday at all, Devin Funchess, Derek Deese Jr., who it seems like maybe they're giving a little bit more of a shot to. We'll see how long, that goes on for. But they still have a handful, a good amount of tight ends on this roster. Finally, we have Nolan Given, who was a UDFA signing for the Lions, so he's going to hit the waiver wire. There was actually $10K dead here for the Detroit Lions with this. Not a lot of money, right? Especially in NFL terms. It's a good amount of money, but not in the NFL terms. But $10,000 dead cap the Lions are going to have to face here with waiving Nolan Given. Now, Nolan Given is the other guy that played at the fullback position in this game. When the Lions went to I-form sets, he played at the fullback position. But I think it's a very similar reason to the reason that Garrett Griffin got cut, is they didn't really do much with him in the passing game. Pass underneath. I thought his lead blocking was very hit and miss. I think it's very similar to the reason that we ended up cutting Garrett Griffin and the depth that we have right now at the tight end position. And these two guys really didn't bring much in the pass game for us. But it does make it interesting for these next 2 preseason games. Who are the Lions going to try to give some reps to at fullback if they come out in those sets? Because it is part of their offense. That's why they pay Jason Cabinda, right? Because Cabinda brings flexibility. They believe Cabinda is not only a good lead blocker, because there's a difference. I mean, you can't just put anybody at fullback, be like, he's going to be good. That's not true. Jason Cabinda was much better, in my opinion, from the small sample size that I saw, than Nolan Given at this position. But with that being said, they believe Cabinda is starting to develop some flexibility within his game. And they really weren't showing that or utilizing much of that with Nolan Given either. Also, I think part of this is a guy like Devin Funchess. Devin Funchess doing pretty darn well, specifically in the receiving game, also having who I thought was a pretty good run blocking rep. Pass protection, we'll see where that comes into play. He probably won't be utilized there much at all anyway. However, Devin Funchess, the way that he kind of shined in the receiving game, definitely doesn't mean he's going to win a spot or get a spot, because I don't know how many tight ends we're going to keep, but I think it'd be very difficult for someone like that to break into this, because last year we only kept 2. If we keep 2 this year, I don't know how he makes the team, because to me then it's Hockenson, it's Brock Wright. But then you also have to throw in, they'll probably keep 3 because James Mitchell, who we haven't really seen, so maybe he ends up on some sort of list or something. But Devin Funchess, he did as well as he did. You want to give reps to that guy, possibly see how much you can expand upon his game, but understanding that what he's good at, maybe what he's good at is not only a little bit more valuable, the receiving game, but also what he's good at, he's better at that than what they are or what they're good at. Maybe that's kind of how I look at it, because Funchess was big time for us, and you can always use those type of receiving threats. So those are the 3 cuts that the Lions have listed so far. We'll see where that goes from here, but I'm definitely keeping an eye on the whole Cabinda situation, and I'm interested to see. Seems like they may use Brock Wright a little bit in some of the spots that they ended up using, guys like Nolan Given and Shane Zylstra, because if Brock Wright is going to make the team, if you could play that and just hold it down, where it's like, okay, wait, why Cabinda's out? We know that we trust you in line to block. I thought, because even Dan Cale brought up his pass protection rep. I definitely thought he had the best pass protection rep. So if he can bring that, and be able to play maybe a little bit of fullback, now it makes a better shot that he makes the team, because I still don't think he's a lock, but it definitely is in a good spot if he could do that for the Lions. And Shane Zylstra, guys like that, I mean, it's just a deep cornerback tight end room for the Lions. So we hit on a lot there, and we also got some notes from today's training camp practice. These are not my notes. I was not at training camp today. This was, I believe, only open to the media, but they did give us some notes. It sounds like they did a lot of situational drills. Again, it sounds like it was also a lighter day. So these are notes that I have gathered from different places. First one that I did see is Aiden Hutchinson, I guess, matched up with a Shane Zylstra, and he lit him up. This is no surprise, whether it's in pass protection or run blocking, but specifically as a run blocking situation, because Pride Detroit said this was 11 on 11s. I would assume he was trying to run block against Hutch. If you just watch Hutchinson in college, putting a tight end on a Hutchinson and just saying one-on-one is a nightmare. That's not something that you can do. That's just not something that you can do. He was just wrecking that in college. So understandable why that would happen. And Shane Zylstra isn't like some kind of dominant blocker either, right? He's a little bit more on the receiving side, even though they want to see him expand his game a little bit more. So yeah, I can understand that. But the first little situation they noted was Lions got the ball at their own 49-yard line with 16 seconds, so they had to get in field goal range. They're down by 1, and for the first team offense, it ended with a Charles Harris sack. It was one play, he sacked, beat Taylor Decker on a spin move, sacked the quarterback Jared Goff, and the drill was over. That's it. So it's a tough situation, but it's a situation that does happen. Got to make a play. Taking a sack is not something that we can do in this situation, right? That's not very good, and I'm assuming that Charles Harris must have won this rep very, very fast. All right, it stinks when you're not there because you don't really know how it developed. Does Goff hold the ball too long? Did he just blow by him like that? It's kind of what it sounds like. Either way, that's not very good. But the second team offense had a little bit more success, I guess. It sounds like they hit Tom Kennedy on a short route, but they didn't have enough time to run a second play. Maybe you could push it, you could try, but with 16 seconds, there is a chance if you hit like a 5-yard pass to get up there, spike it, and possibly try to run another play, the next play's got to be out of bounds or a shot to the end zone, but if it's inbounds, you're probably running out of clock. But they hit an underneath pass, sounds like to Kennedy. They spiked it with 5 seconds, and both kickers missed a field goal short, which was a 58-yard field goal attempt. Another situation they listed was the Lions down by 7 with 20 seconds to play on their opponent's 18-yard line. So I think here you're looking at possibly 1 to 2, maybe a couple of plays that you can hit here to try to get into the end zone. The first unit started off with an angle pass to DeAndre Swift, which put them all the way at the 3-yard line, so a 15-yard game. Then the Lions went up, spiked it. Jared Goff then threw it to St. Brown. It sounds like he kind of just dirted the pass as it was not there, it was incomplete. And then it was CJ Moore on their final attempt because you can't settle for a field goal. CJ Moore broke up a pass. And a lot of love for the coaches to end the drill. So that to me makes it sound like CJ Moore is getting some good reps. It sounds like with the second unit, probably behind Tracy Walker and Deshaun Elliott, I would think. But he's probably getting some good reps to hear that from CJ Moore, ramping himself up. I'm a fan of CJ. I think CJ makes this team. I'm a fan of him, but the time that he has missed always makes it difficult. It just does when they can't see the growth and they see other guys, because then anytime you see another guy flash, you're like, oh, that guy's flashing, and you forget about this guy a little bit. CJ Moore getting back is huge, and making a play is even bigger. They also did another scenario. Lions down 7, 45 seconds from their own 49-yard line. That's a tough situation to be in. I'm sure the defense was playing some very soft coverage, as the first 2 completions sound like were underneath to Hockenson and Josh Reynolds. Then they had an incomplete pass to DJ Chark. Then hit Shane Zylstra, it sounds like underneath. Then it was an incomplete pass thrown to St. Brown. From the notes of Pride Detroit, they said he was in great coverage. Okudah was locking him up. That's a good note. Hey, they're encouraged. I'm encouraged too. Sounds like he was locking up St. Brown. That's always good news. Oh my gosh, that was, because we know what St. Brown is. So if Okudah has a good rep there, that's something that you love to hear. He's getting the mojo back, man. It's going to take a minute, but I think he's getting it back. And that comes with reps. He will be the starting outside cornerback across from Romani week 1. I'm putting it out there now. I'm just telling you that's what's going to happen. And then they had another incomplete pass to DJ Chark on a 4th down play, which it sounds like Jared Goff missed a pass. The second unit started with the first down, Tom Kennedy being covered by Chase Lucas, but Chase Lucas came back, got it back, and he ended up getting an interception that ended that drive. Interception by Chase Lucas looked like a little bit of a prayer that they put up with off coverage from Chase Lucas by the clip that they showed us, and he was just kind of sitting on it. Probably a tough situation, a tough pass to come up with, so it wasn't like it looked like it was tight coverage, but it looks like he just kind of put it up, a little bit of a prayer there, and Chase Lucas made a good play coming down with the football. One play that I like, though, is the one where you see Trinity Benson getting over top and scoring from Tim Boyle, because I've seen a lot of that with Blau in training camp, and they've had a very good connection there. Blau's done really well hitting some of those shots. To see Boyle get one cleanly like that definitely looks good. It's also a fantastic grab by Trinity Benson over the shoulder. I mean, that's an awesome grab. Benson can absolutely make some big-time plays. He just needs to clean up some of the little things, because that was even popping up last year. Like, it hits your hands. You got to catch the football, man. I mean, I get one drop here and there, but it can't be something that I think about when I throw you the football. I shouldn't be thinking, well, he might drop this one. Can't be thinking that with Trinity Benson. Chase Lucas is a player, man, but we'll see how fast the Lions push him into a bigger role. But that's something to definitely look for. And again, it's why I'm so curious with Mike Hughes, because I think Mike Hughes should be getting reps on the outside, because to me, it sounds like A.J. Parker is going to be their one slot, even though I don't think he should be locked in. It's like, hey, A.J.'s got to be the one. Like, to me, A.J. hasn't been that great where it's like he has to be the one. But at the same time, I understand it. He's had some good reps, and A.J. Parker does seem like that's where he is. So I would give reps to Mike Hughes on the outside, unless the Lions don't feel like he can do that. I would do it like he did last year with Kansas City, and then I would be giving the second team reps to Chase Lucas. But we'll see how fast they kind of mix him into that. With all this going on, it sounds like Malcolm Rodriguez was working with Alex Anzalone, which is cool because we didn't see that on Friday. I would love to see how that combination plays together. I can tell you what, you have 2 pretty agile linebackers that can work in coverage, and you have one guy that's a very good blitzer, Malcolm. I think I always get caught up at, well, they're 2 similar but they're really, I mean, Malcolm Rodriguez can kind of do it all. Like, he's undersized, but he can work between the box. He is physical as heck. He is extremely powerful, and he's a great blitzer. Meanwhile, Alex Anzalone, who has good fluidity, he's a smart linebacker that can definitely help in coverage just because he can match up with different pieces, and he's always been a very versatile linebacker. That two could actually be an awesome duo. I would actually really love to see what that duo looks like. Even though I said, hey, Jared Davis and Derek Barnes working with Malcolm, I love how they complement each other, and I love how Alex complements those guys. I would like to see these two work together, especially in today's NFL. That could be great. That could be really, really good. I would love to see what that looks like. Also, they noted a Devin Funchess touchdown. It's caught in a 7-on-7 drill on Will Harris, and you also saw the one from Trinity Benson, that little sideline touchdown that he had. Man, he gets over the top. He's just got to clean up some of those focus drops, and I think he'd be looked at in a way better light. He needs to do that, though, because I'm telling you, those drops will get you cut with Tom Kennedy doing what Tom Kennedy's doing. With that being said, let me know your thoughts, comments below. Those are the notes that we have from today's practice. I'll see you guys in the next one, and we'll continue to update when the Lions make roster moves. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.